Welcome back to the English Nook, everyone. I'm Maya.
And I'm Ethan. It is a profound pleasure to have you back with us as we open up another masterclass in our C1 Advanced series.
Today, we are tackling a question that we receive constantly from our most accomplished, high-level learners, professionals, academics, and creators who already possess an exceptional grasp of the language. The question is simple, yet incredibly complex. How do I truly level up my English speaking when I am already fluent?
This is the classic dilemma of the intermediate plateau. When you are a beginner, your progress is highly visible. You learn 20 new verbs, and suddenly you can order food. But once you hit the upper intermediate and advanced levels, your progress slows down drastically. You can express any idea you want, but you feel like you are using the exact same generic vocabulary over and over again. Your English feels functional, but it lacks flavor.
It lacks nuance and texture. You sound like a textbook, not a person. And today, we want to completely deconstruct how to break through that barrier. To level up at the C1 stage, you have to stop focusing on traditional studying and start focusing on cognitive restructuring. You need to change how your brain processes language in real time.
Cognitive restructuring. That is a powerful concept, Maya. Let's look at the first major mistake advanced speakers make when trying to elevate their speech. They assume that to sound more advanced, they need to systematically inject massive, archaic vocabulary words into everyday sentences. They try to sound like Shakespeare during a casual business meeting.
Oh, it's a total trap. It backfires completely because it sounds artificial and incredibly awkward. True C1 precision isn't about using the biggest word possible. It's about using the most accurate word for the specific context. It's about mastering register, knowing when to be elegant and understated, and when to use a precise piece of idiomatic phrasing.
Exactly. It's the difference between saying, "I am experiencing a state of extreme fatigue," and naturally dropping a phrase like, "I am completely burnt out." One sounds robotic, the other sounds culturally fluent. To bridge that gap, you have to actively build what we call an active repertoire.
Yes, most advanced learners have a massive passive vocabulary. They understand 95% of what they read or hear in complex podcasts. But their active vocabulary, the words that actually come out of their mouth spontaneously, is much smaller. Leveling up your speaking is entirely about converting that passive knowledge into active, effortless output.
It is a fascinating psychological transition. And throughout today's episode, we are going to walk you through the precise framework to achieve this, including cognitive shadows, shadowing techniques, and structural pacing.
As always, we will wrap up this advanced guide with the word tour at the very end of our session, where we will isolate and analyze 5 premium C1 vocabulary choices used naturally in our conversation, so you can immediately adopt them.
If you are ready to stop translating in your head and finally unlock a natural, commanding voice in English, please take a brief moment to engage with that like mechanism and subscribe to the Nook channel.
All right, Ethan, let's peel back the first layer. If memorizing lists of big words is a failure, what is the actual psychological starting point for leveling up our spoken output?
It all begins with a concept that almost no one talks about, Maya: identifying and curing your linguistic safety net. Let's look at how our brains accidentally keep us trapped in basic English.
So, Ethan, right before the break, you mentioned a fascinating phrase: the linguistic safety net. This is a hidden psychological trap that almost every advanced speaker falls into without even realizing it. Your linguistic safety net is the small collection of basic, comfortable words that your brain defaults to whenever you need to express an idea quickly.
Oh, absolutely. For example, think about the word good or important. An advanced learner knows at least 50 sophisticated alternatives to the word important. Words like paramount, pivotal, critical, or indispensable. Yet, when they are in the middle of a high-stakes presentation or a spontaneous conversation, what word actually comes out of their mouth? Important. Every single time.
Because it's safe. Your brain is naturally optimized for efficiency. When you are speaking under pressure, your cognitive processing speed prioritizes speed over precision. It reaches into your brain, grabs the easiest, most accessible tool in your toolkit, and throws it out. This creates a state of stagnation. You aren't making mistakes, but you aren't growing either.
Exactly. It feels like you are driving a high-performance sports car, but you never take it out of second gear. You are functional, but you are completely restricted. To shatter this safety net, you have to introduce intentional, conscious friction into your daily practice. You have to actively deny your brain the easy choice.
Yes, one of the most effective strategies to achieve this is a technique I call synonym restriction. When you are practicing your speaking, whether you are talking to yourself in the car or recording a video journal, pick 3 of your favorite safety net words and completely ban them from your vocabulary for the day. If you want to say something was hard, you have to force your brain to find laborious, taxing, or formidable.
That is a brilliant cognitive exercise, Maya. It completely forces your brain out of its autopilot mode. At first, it feels incredibly awkward. You might stumble, pause, or feel a bit of mental fatigue. But that exact friction is the sound of your passive vocabulary converting into active vocabulary. You are literally building new neural pathways for speech.
Precisely. You are training your brain to stop treating advanced English as an academic concept that you only read in books and start treating it as a live functional tool for real-time expression.
It is all about shifting from a passive consumer of the language to an active architect of your own voice. But overcoming the safety net is only half the battle. Next, we need to address how you actually structure your thoughts, and why the secret to sounding advanced isn't about how fast you speak, but how beautifully you use silence.
Ah, the power of the pause. That is a massive differentiator between an intermediate speaker and an elite C1 communicator. Let's break down the mechanics of structural pacing in our next section.
Let's get into the raw reality of this, Maya. When many advanced learners try to level up their speaking, they fall victim to a massive illusion, the illusion of speed. They assume that to look truly fluent and native-like, they need to speak at a breakneck pace. They rush through their sentences, trying to eliminate every millisecond of silence.
Oh, absolutely. It comes from a place of deep-seated insecurity, doesn't it? Under the surface, the speaker is terrified that if they pause for even 1 second, the listener will think they don't know the English word. They view silence as a symptom of incompetence. But in reality, rushing completely ruins your impact.
It does. It completely strips away your authority. When you rush, your articulation drops, your intonation becomes completely flat, and you sound incredibly anxious. If you look at elite CEOs, global leaders, or top-tier public speakers, they don't sprint through their ideas. They speak with deliberate structural pacing. They use the power of the pause.
Exactly. A well-placed pause is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of supreme confidence. It signals to the audience that you own the room and that your thoughts are worth waiting for. Furthermore, pausing gives your brain the vital millisecond it needs to bypass your safety net words and pull out that premium C1 vocabulary we talked about in the deep dive.
But let's look at what happens when speakers don't pause intentionally. Their brain still needs time to process the next thought, so instead of silence, they fill the gap with chronic filler words. They litter their sentences with like, you know, actually, or the dreaded and This completely erodes the sophistication of their delivery.
Right. You can have a brilliant multi-syllable vocabulary, but if every third word out of your mouth is an your clinical professional image is completely shattered. True C1 speaking requires you to become comfortable with the silence. If your brain is searching for a word, don't fill the void with noise. Simply stop speaking, let the pause happen naturally, find the precise word, and continue.
It sounds so simple, but psychologically, it takes an immense amount of courage to sit in that silence for the first time. It is a massive shift in mindset. You have to stop treating a conversation as an examination where you are being graded on speed and start treating it as a performance where you control the rhythm.
Beautifully put, Ethan. Once you master the tempo of your own voice, the final piece of the puzzle is changing what you actually talk about. To speak like a C1 communicator, you have to look closely at your conversation topics. Let's break down the practical shift you can make in your daily life to ensure your topics match your advanced skills.
All right, Maya, we have conquered the psychological safety net and mastered the power of the pause. But there is a final, structural shift required to truly achieve elite C1 fluency. You have to actively upgrade what you talk about in your daily life. If you only practice English by describing your weekend, your favorite food, or your holiday plans, your language will remain permanently trapped in a basic, descriptive register.
That is an incredibly profound point, Ethan. To speak at an advanced level, you have to transition from descriptive communication to conceptual communication. You need to move away from simply stating facts or listing events and start analyzing systems, theories, and abstract concepts. You aren't just saying what happened. You are explaining why it happened and analyzing the wider societal implications.
Exactly. It's what sociologists call shifting from an individual lens to a systemic lens. Instead of just talking about an exhausting day at work, a C1 speaker frames it within the broader societal context of modern employee burnout and corporate efficiency models. This structural shift naturally forces your brain to pull out advanced connectors and abstract nouns that you would never use in a casual conversation about the weather.
And to feed that high level output, you have to be incredibly intentional about your daily input. You cannot consume low level repetitive media and expect your brain to magically produce sophisticated, nuanced speech. You need to immerse yourself in complex arguments, philosophical debates, and high tier journalism. But here is the secret weapon: you cannot just consume it passively.
Yes, passively listening to a brilliant podcast while doing the dishes is not enough to level up your speech. To convert that input into an active skill, you have to perform what I call active synthesis. The moment you finish reading a dense article or listening to a complex analysis, immediately force yourself to speak out loud for 2 minutes, summarizing the core thesis and offering your own counter-argument.
That is where the magic happens. You are forcing your brain to synthesize complex data on the spot, organize a coherent narrative structure, and deploy advanced phrasing spontaneously. It bridges the gap completely. You are no longer just an observer of the English language. You are an active, commanding participant in intellectual discourse.
It completely redefines what it means to be fluent. It gives you a genuine, authentic voice that carries real weight and authority in any professional or academic setting.
Beautifully stated, Ethan. When you implement these strategies, you aren't just learning English anymore. You are refining your critical thinking and elevating how you project your mind to the world.
Now that we have mapped out the cognitive strategies and real-world habits to shatter the intermediate plateau, let's pivot straight into the word tour to isolate and solidify the advanced vocabulary we used naturally during today's session.
And that brings us to the final chapter of today's masterclass. The word tour. Today we deconstructed the hidden psychology of language acquisition. Let's isolate 5 premium C1 advanced expressions from our discussion that will bring immediate precision to your spoken English.
These terms are absolutely indispensable for analyzing cognitive habits, personal growth, and professional development. Let's dissect them.
Our first concept is a noun phrase: the intermediate plateau.
This refers to a frustrating stage in language learning where your skills are fully functional, but your visible progress slows down drastically, making it difficult to achieve advanced precision.
For example, to break through the intermediate plateau, she had to stop memorizing grammar rules and start focusing on advanced reading materials.
Word number 2 is the noun phrase, cognitive restructuring.
A psychological process involving identifying, challenging, and actively changing the way your brain processes information or responds to a situation.
For example, mastering public speaking in a second language requires a level of cognitive restructuring to overcome the fear of making mistakes.
Word number 3 is the noun phrase, active repertoire.
The collection of words, phrases, or skills that a person can actually produce and use spontaneously and correctly when speaking or writing.
For example, he reads complex economic journals daily. But very few of those advanced terms have made it into his active repertoire.
Our fourth item is a noun, stagnation.
A state or condition where there is absolutely no growth, progress, activity, or development.
For example, relying purely on the same basic vocabulary choices will inevitably lead to linguistic stagnation.
And finally, word number 5 is the noun phrase, active synthesis.
The process of combining different ideas, data, or complex pieces of information into a brand new, coherent, and personalized spoken or written summary.
For example, instead of just passively watching lectures, she practiced active synthesis by explaining the core concepts out loud to herself.
A truly elegant set of vocabulary to help you articulate the nuances of human learning and psychological development. Now, before we conclude, we are inviting our advanced cohort to engage with us directly.
Your challenge today is incredibly straightforward. Scan our vocabulary list. Select one word or phrase, whether it's active repertoire, stagnation, or intermediate plateau, and craft just one original sentence using it in the comments below.
That's it. Just a single sentence to transform passive knowledge into an active skill. Maya and I will be personally auditing the comment section to review your prose and offer professional feedback.
If this discussion added value to your advanced fluency journey and helped you look at your practice through a sharper lens, please activate the like mechanism and subscribe to the channel. Your interaction directly sustains the Nook.
Thank you for your intellectual curiosity, your focus, and your time today.
Step outside your linguistic safety net. Embrace the power of the pause, and we will see you back at the Nook for our next advanced analysis.
Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.